Hey everyone, Scott's low budget projects. Been on a little bit of a hiatus for a while due to the weather change and had some other things come up in life. And the Ford Ranger Little Bohemian engine swap thing is kind of on the back burner right now, unfortunately. Ran into some issues. Stuff isn't quite fitting like it should, so it unfortunately is now sitting outside, which is not ideal. It really needs to be pushed back in the carport. The truck currently is not running. It's kind of a boat anchor at the moment, which is very unfortunate because it doesn't have a hood on it right now, and I don't like that. It's kind of making me feel uncomfortable just dealing with that. Anyway, the reason I decided to make a video is I wanted to address one of my first videos that I uploaded, or first or second, like real videos that weren't just clips of me doing something random, was my 2013 Dodge Challenger RT gauge cluster. I've been getting a lot of comments and stuff. This is just a kind of a follow-up for that. I hate to say this, but I actually sold the car. I no longer own it anymore. So if you guys are looking for more detailed information and things like that, let's look in the comments. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but a lot of your questions will be answered if you read the comments, because a lot of them are like, how did you get the wires hooked up? How do I get the gauges to work right? A lot of it, and some of it, I'm sorry to say, is rewatch the video. You're not looking at it close enough. It's not that complicated. You just you can't go in there and hammer on stuff and jerk on things. You gotta do it smart. It's like working on a watch. You cannot be using brute force or things like that when you're assembling or disassembling a gauge cluster. They're delicate. You gotta be careful. Unfortunately, one of the people that was working on his broke one of the needles on his. I said, I never said to push on the needles. You push down in the middle, the round part on the needle. That's where you push. You don't push out on the end. You can't slam the cluster around on the table or a workbench. If you looked in the video, I had it sitting on a piece of foam. There was a reason for that. You don't want to bust these things. They're delicate. That is actually the first gauge cluster I have ever taken apart to that amount. I've had them apart, but I've never had them tore all the way apart like that. So putting the needles on and stuff, that was the first for me. I have never done that before. A lot of that was just, it made sense, and I did it, and it worked. I had to readjust a couple things because I bumped the gauge cluster when I was moving it around, and the tack was off. If you look in the end of the video, you can see it was reading real high when the car wasn't running. That's because I had it installed incorrectly. What I ended up doing was I pulled the gauge cluster back out of the car. You do not mess with it when it's in the car. If there's power going to that gauge cluster, when you're messing with that, you can screw up the gauge cluster. You have to be smart about that. I'm not trying to, get on anybody's case, but just like I said, it's not something, if you don't know what you're doing, I recommend don't mess with it. Have somebody else mess with it. If you don't feel comfortable, if you're not confident in your abilities, I'm just going to say don't mess with it. And I'm not trying to scare people off and saying it's impossible to do, because I did it. It's not that hard to do. You just have to think ahead when you're doing it. Just don't go in there thinking I have all the answers. Go in there going, okay, this is what he did. There's some things missing. I need to know how to do this. Watch what I'm doing in the video. It explains it pretty well. And like I said, for the things I don't discuss in the video or you're unsure of, look in the comment sections on that second video that I posted about the Dodge Challenger cluster. Anyway, the Dodge Challenger went to a new owner. We're ending the topic on the gauge cluster thing. So I'm sorry if you guys still have questions on the cluster thing. It's just I don't have the car anymore, so I really can't show you anything on it. So it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. The car went down the road. Nothing wrong with the car. It was just time for a new owner. The car was sitting outside all the time. It got dirty. I live on gravel. It was constantly getting dirty. I had problems. I got mice in it at one point. It was just, unfortunately, I'm living in this rental house, and it gets mice in here, and it's an old farmhouse, and it's just not a good environment for a car like that. Unfortunately, it was a nice car. Sold it to a nice gal that lives about 2 hours away from here. She came all the way down. She's real excited to own it, and I was very happy to sell it to her. She was very nervous about owning it because she'd never had a car like this before, and she was bombarding me with a lot of questions. And I'll be honest, I was getting a little, I was very nervous because I felt like, I don't know, maybe it was just the context or whatever. I felt like she thought I was ripping her off, and I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm trying to be an honest person here. This is what the car is. It ain't perfect, but it's better than a lot of cars that you will find for the price. So anyway, and the car hadn't been wrecked or anything like that. It had cosmetic problems. The bumper had scratches on it. There was cracks in the paint. There was chips in the paint. Tires weren't amazing. It had, a little over, maybe we'll say quarter tread. I had not changed oil on it when I sold it to her. I was told her that it needed an oil change, things like that. Just little things like that. There was a lot of stuff, like she was asking me about why is the parking brake not working that great, and I said, I don't know, I didn't use the parking brake that often, just dumb things like that. And it's nothing against her, she's a very nice person. I have nothing against selling it to her. I honestly wish her the best with the car. It was a great car while I owned it, and I just, I hope she's the next right owner for it. I will just put it that way. It was a 6-speed manual car with a 5.7 Hemi. Rear-wheel drive, of course. Had factory 28-inch wheels on it, and they were chrome, chrome-clad, rather, aluminum wheels. And it had put an aftermarket Cervanis shaker hood on it, and put a different shifter knob on it. Otherwise, the rest of the car is more or less stock. I put an aftermarket, I forget what brand, Soundstream radio. It was a DVD, Bluetooth CD player, which was pretty cool. I thought it could play DVDs and stuff. And then I installed a kit so you could, move the car and watch a DVD. Ooh, so scary. I don't know. I never understood why that was an illegal thing. If you're that dumb and you get in a car wreck, you know what? You're stupid. You shouldn't have a license if you're going to be getting in car wrecks when you're driving down the highway watching a movie. Why? I don't know. I don't understand. If people cannot control themselves from being that distracted, they have no business being behind a wheel. My personal opinion, but I've never done it. I just never understood never understood the thought behind it. Why? If you're that distracted that you are going to wreck your car, you have no business driving. Anyway, sold the car to her, got a fair price for it, I think. The money is supposed to be going to getting a new house, or not a new house, buying a house. We'll see how that goes. The market right now is just not great. It is super expensive right now to buy anything. I was just told property taxes nearly doubled in Nebraska. So definitely not ideal situation to want to buy a house, at least not for me, because I have no savings other than selling the car. So that's why this channel is called Scott's Lowback Projects, because I'm basically a broke guy just building things with what I got. And I know some of you might say, well, you put an awful lot of money into that Ranger of yours that you're building. Yeah, you're right, but that didn't all happen in one day. That was, progression. That was, paycheck, a little bit here, a little bit there, sort of thing going into it. Anyway, kind of coming full circle with that. I said the Ranger currently is on the back burner, unfortunately. I need to actually figure out a way to either get it to the shop and get the motor put in the rest of the way. I don't really care if it doesn't run, but right now the engine and transmission are just kind of just sitting next to each other, and I don't really like how that's sitting in there. It really needs to be in there better than it is. Basically, the input shaft is touching the back of the clutch, and that's not good. Hopefully, it doesn't ruin something. But the transmission's not super heavy, but at the same time, not really an ideal situation. Anyway, so that's what's going on with the Ranger project. Sorry for all those that were excited and hoping it was going to be done right away. Life sometimes kicks you in the, kicks you in the nuts, and that's kind of one of those deals. It didn't quite work the way I planned. Ran out of time. Well, ran out of time and ran out of energy. Let's be honest. It was more energy than time. Just didn't have the, the oomph and stuff to keep it going. Plus, after the shoulder thing and stuff, I'm just really, I don't know, paranoid about trying to lift things, crawl underneath stuff, and push up on stuff. I'm by myself, like I always mention, so there's nobody here to help me if something falls or goes wrong. And so I'm just very cautious about just pushing ahead. I know a lot of people just like, oh, I've done that a million times. I did it out in the Walmart parking lot, that kind of stuff. This is not a factory setup by any means. I am trying to make things work. I do not have a kit. There might be some kit out there, but I do not have it. This is trying to make factory stuff from two different, an F-150 and a Ranger work together is what I'm trying to do. And then there's a few scattered little goodies, for like conversion swap stuff that they have, like motor mounts and radiator and stuff like that. I'm trying to make all that stuff all work together. I'm hitting some speed bumps and running into a few issues here and there, and been reaching out to the Ford Ranger V8 swap group on Facebook. There's 3 or 4 of them, and probably more. And some people have been very helpful. Other people, of course, are just giving me the old, why didn't you just put a Ford Explorer V8 in there? Well, I don't have a Ford Explorer, and they're not that common around here. The V8 ones, anyway. The 5-liter V8 specifically. Those vehicles have been off the road for a long time around Nebraska. I haven't seen one in probably 10 years, if not longer. And I live in a rural area of Nebraska. Where I'm from, it's we're near Lincoln, Nebraska, about 30 miles north of there. And it's an ag community. Not a lot of people were rocking in 5-liter Ford Explorers in this area. So it just wasn't that popular. Pickup trucks all over the place. You can find 5-liter F-150s all over the place. That's why I have one. That's why I'm using it. I happen to have an F-150 and had some unfortunate circumstances. The block was able to be used for this project. That is why we're going the F-150 route. Crown Victoria is another thing. You got the ag community. Everybody's in, you got the older couples and stuff. They're into the big luxury, I don't know if you call them luxury cars, but, cruiser cars. They were extremely popular when I was in high school. Those cars were everywhere. And of course, everybody knows police departments had them, all that stuff. Taxi services had them, which we don't have a lot of taxis around here. But needless to say, they are all over the place, or at least they were. All those cars nowadays have been used in demo derbies, all sorts of different things. Now I know these are newer. Cletus McFarland, his, what do you want to call it? The Freedom 500, Freedom Factory that he does down there. They do all the Crown Vic races. That's where a lot of those cars end up. I know there are millions of them cars around, I'm sure. But anyway, that's where a lot of those, I know a lot of them are 4.6s, which I think all of them are 4.6s. But anyway, needless to say, I'm just saying the cars are getting used for things. They aren't plentiful like they used to be. Yes, there might still be a few here and there that people saved. Or, I call them retired demolition cars that the engine might still be there, but the rest of the car's gone around it, which I don't really need the rest of the car. I just need the engine and the accessories off the engine. More specifically right now, I am trying to desperately find a driver's side alternator bracket. The reason being is because the F-150s use a passenger side alternator bracket, which wouldn't be a problem, but unfortunately, the way the water neck comes off of the intake, it collides right into the alternator, and the radiator hits the alternator as well. And it's just in the complete wrong spot. This Ranger, I'm not running power steering on it. I'm not running air conditioning, at least not right at this moment. So I want to run everything on the driver's side. They do make them on Crown Vics, but for some reason they are like hen's teeth. They are just unobtainium, and I don't understand why. I had bought a universal alternator mounting bracket. I got it. Maybe I could get it to work, but I'm gonna have to modify some stuff. It wasn't quite what I wanted. It's got the turnbuckle thing, but then it has this billet. I don't know if it's aluminum or steel or whatever it's made out of. and they say it's supposed to go over the water pump bolts. Well, it doesn't even fit over the water pump bolts, so something isn't right there. I did end up getting a Crown Victoria water pump, which I know you're probably wondering why. The reason being is because I'm not running power steering. I'm not running a. Let's see. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not running power steering, and I'm not running air conditioning, but I'm using a V belt. Or sorry, I'm not. I'm not using a V belt. I'm using a serpentine belt setup, which I know some of you are like, why don't you just use the V belt? Well, I like serpentine belt setup, so we're going with serpentine belt. Anyway, the reason I'm doing that, a reason I have to use the Crown Vic one is because they are what they call standard rotation or clockwise rotation water pumps. F-150s, on the other hand, apparently use counterclockwise rotating water pumps. I did not know this at the time when I put the motor in there. I had the water pump already. It wasn't new. It was already on this motor. I figured it's fine. If it starts leaking, I'll change it out later kind of thing. But turns out, nope, that ain't going to work. I'm going to have to take the water pump back off. So I have this Crown Vic one on there. And that should work. The other thing I was very concerned about is there are different lengths of water pump snouts. To my knowledge, I guess the Ford Explorer ones, Mercury Mountaineer, anything with the 5 liter, and I think in the SUV platform anyway, they all had the short snout ones, which required you to get a whole entire timing cover. All that stuff needs to be changed. I do not want to go that route. That is way too much work for what I want to do. I know it might come back to bite me in the butt. I might have to do some more modification that I'm not foreseeing right now, obviously. But right now I'm just trying to make stuff work in the simplest form possible. Anyway, the other thing is the F-150 water pumps and the Crown Vic water pumps, and I believe the Mustang water pumps as well. Don't quote me on the Mustang part. And I think maybe T-Birds and Cougars, 5 liter Cougars and T-Birds as well. I'm not 100% sure. I believe they are all the same length as far as the water pump snout lengths go. The only difference is I know for a fact that the Crown Vics are a clockwise rotation water pump. The Mustangs and Cougars and T-Birds, I am not sure about those, but I know for a fact a Crown Vic one is. So I'm using Crown Vic one. The other thing is people are complaining about or concerned about flow. And I said, I don't think that's going to be an issue. And then they're also talking about the mid plates are different and stuff. I'm well aware of this. I ran into this on the pickup I was working on, that F-150 that I got the motor from. Yes, there were some issues there. That was a V-belt truck motor originally. I converted it to a serpentine belt truck. Yes, it is a 95 F-150 with a non-roller cam engine in it. Why would you do this? Is because that's what that's what was for sale on Facebook Marketplace at the time, and I needed a running engine. It was one of those deals, Scott's low budget projects. It kind of, in a way, christened the channel, even though it never made an official appearance. There was a lot of struggle and heartache on that one because I paid $4,000 for that truck, and it just did not pan out for me good. But knock on wood. Knocking on wood table here. There you go. It has been working. The last issue I had with it actually blew the transmission cooler line off again. And I finally got fed up enough. I took the line off, and where the previous owner had spliced it with a piece of rubber hose, I took the entire line off of there, and I brazed a section of line in the spot where they put the rubber hose. Originally, it was like that from the factory. It wasn't brazed, but it was one solid line from the transmission to the transmission cooler. I put it back together like that, and in theory, it really should never break again unless it rubs a hole through it. Which, my luck, let's just hope that never happens. Anyway, that truck is going to be my snowplow truck this winter. Here is the other thing that came up. This is also why my other Ranger project, the V8 Little Bohemian Ranger project, is on the back burner. And might come as a surprise to some of you, but I acquired another pickup. Why, you might ask? Well, it was kind of one of those things that sort of fell into my lap. The place I work at, small town shop, mom and pop kind of thing, two brothers own the shop. I work there. They're both old enough to be my dad. I'm 36, by the way, so yeah, they're not young. Anyway, Just random customer, didn't really know who they were, showed up at the shop, or I should say, actually, better yet, called on the phone. Boss was out at the moment. I grabbed the phone. They started talking to me, saying they had these two Ranger pickups. They wanted the rims and tires off of the one, or sorry, they wanted the tires off the one pickup, put on the other pickup. And I said, okay. I'm like, well, what's going on with the other one? They just said, oh, it just wore out, and I just want to get rid of the truck. And I said, and then of course, then she asked me, do you know anybody who buys used or junked vehicles? And I go, well, there's like you pull it and so salvage yards. Basically, that's what you pull it is. If you're not familiar with them, you pull it is a pick and pull that is local to Nebraska. There's a few of them in Nebraska. The closest one is in Lincoln for me. I'm not a big pick and pull guy. I never really go to them. I don't have the time. As a full-time mechanic, you don't have time to go walk around in the yard. And when on your days off, the last thing I want to do is go pull parts off cars. Anyway, unless I'm extremely desperate. And normally I'm more of let's go find it on eBay or something like that rather than go and do it. But sometimes it'll come back to bite you. But anyway, that was her plan. She's okay. And I said, you know what? All you got to do is call them up, tell them what you got. I said, you might get $500 for it. And I said, the reason I threw out that number is because I had two Jeep Cherokees, myself, and I got $500 a piece for them. Both, one ran but had a dead cylinder. The other one, I took the motor apart, found out that I had a flattened cam. One of the lifters basically destroyed itself. Why, I don't know. It just let loose. Those are both 4-liter Jeep Cherokees, which was very frustrating. And they broke down 3 months apart from each other. I had the other one for about 10 years. The other one I had for 8 months. So very frustrating. Anyway, sad story aside, lady, that's what she was going to do. So she brought the truck showed up. I'm sitting there eating lunch at the shop, which is the gas station. So there's, we got food and stuff there. So I'm sitting up there in the booths at the gas station eating lunch. And my other boss comes walking up to me and, jokes like, haha. He's like, hey, Scott, you want to buy a Ranger pickup? And I was like, not really. Because I already knew who he was talking about and stuff. And didn't even cross my mind. Then I go walking back to the shop after lunch is over. And either I was looking out the window or the door was open and I saw this Ranger sitting there. I go, wait, that's the Ranger that lady wants to get rid of? And a 95 Ford Ranger is what it is. And I was like, it's 4-wheel drive. I'm like, what? I'm like, it doesn't even look that bad. I'm like, what's wrong with it? And, I go and look at it and I'm like, it's got some issues. I mean, there's it's not perfect. It was a manual transmission. I'm like, oh, it probably popped out of gear, rolled into something at one point. The bumper was kind of messed up on the back. There's a dent in the box and just all these little cosmetic things. I'm like, then, I got inside. I'm looking. I'm like, oh, she broke the cigarette lighter in there. Kind of smells like smoke because she was a smoker, whatever. I didn't really care about that stuff. And I'm like, doesn't look that bad. Anyway, the lady shows up and I start talking to her. I said, hey, I'm like, what do you, like, do you really want to get rid of that Ranger? She said, well, yeah, I don't really want it anymore. So I was like, tell you what, I'm like, you ran and drove, right? You drove it here? She said, yeah, I drove it here. Well, she lived about 20 minutes away, so it made it a 20-minute drive here. And she said, oh, it doesn't like to start and blah, blah, blah. And, she had all these things. And I was like, you know what? Tell you what, I'll give you $400 for it. And she, thought about it for a little bit. And she, you know what? Yep. Mike, are you serious? You really want to buy it from me? And I said, yes, I will love to buy it from you. So took her a few days, whatever. I got to go get the title and stuff. I said, that's fine. Bring me the title, sign it over. I'll give you $400. I'll take it, no questions asked. I'm happy to buy it from you. So anyway, did the whole tire swap over thing. So immediately I had to put tires on it. So, I'm out $400 right there for tires, which I was like, that sucks. So the only thing I really did with this truck is I went for a slight little test drive with it and immediately found out the clutch is slipping. And I said, oh, well, maybe I can drive it for a while like this. I'm like, it felt weak. I wasn't that impressed with it. But got up and went down the highway, and I was like, the cruise works. Turns out the vehicle has almost, well, over 300,000 miles on it. Which, you know, some of you are like, why would you buy something like that? Because it was $400, and the body was in pretty darn good shape for what it was. Also, it has a 4-liter pushrod motor in it, which I'm not a huge fan of V6 Ford motors, especially in the Rangers. I really like the 2.3s, although they're gutless, but they are a good running engine. And I'm a big fan of the Durtex or the early single overhead cam 2.3s. I didn't care for the dual plug or the 8 plugs. I didn't really care for those ones. They were kind of the black sheep in my opinion. Anyway, and the same goes for the 2.5s. And anyway, needless to say, bought the truck, whatever. Test drove it, wasn't super impressed with the clutch, so I'm looking online, I'm starting to order. Oh, and the other thing is the back window, they had a slider back window, well, one of the panes of glass was busted out. She had a piece of clear plastic, I don't know, some really thick, it looked like some sort of like tonneau, or not tonneau cover, but like a convertible back window, like that really thick plastic they use for the convertible windows, or like your Jeep side windows on the old zip-up rag top ones. That's what it reminded me of. I'm like, oh, I'm like, wow, that's actually pretty good. Well, anyway, needless to say, it quickly became a money pit. I went to go drive the truck. My parents had called me and said, hey, Scott, you want to go eat supper with us? And I said, sure. I'm like, hey, I'll bring the new truck over, and we can check it out. Well, I'm driving it there to go meet them. That was about 15-minute drive or something from where I live. And about 3/4 of the way, the clutch goes. Just completely gone. It's climbing up a hill, and smoke just jumped out of the clutch. And in the area I live, it's very hilly. There's a lot of hills. And yes, I know Nebraska has hills. Yes, it does. And especially in the area I live, the nickname of this little region is called the Bohemian Alps. And the reason because, yes, there are a lot of hills around here. And you wouldn't think there would be. Nebraska's known for being this boring, blah, blah, blah state nobody cares about. You'll fall asleep because there's nothing but corn. Yeah, real funny. Anyway, part I live in is a lot more hilly. There are some places where you even need hillside combines to farm. Not particularly in this area, but not too far away from here, yes. There are some pretty steep farming areas, which a lot of them get turned into pasture ground, but some people do brave the hill. Anyway, so the clutch went out. Wonderful. I am stuck in the town where we were going to go meet. So, of course, I called my dad and I said, hey, hate to bug you, but can you bring your pickup? Why? I'm like, the clutch went out in the truck I just bought. He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, when did you buy a pickup? Like, 2 days ago. Why'd you buy that for? Didn't you just sell your Challenger? I said, well, no, I hadn't sold the Challenger just yet. But I was still in talks with the person I was going to sell it to, which obviously became a real thing, and I did sell it. But anyway, so got the truck. We drug the truck all the way back to the shop where I work. We flat towed it because I didn't have a trailer, and I mean the clutch was so gone. You could have put it in first gear and let the clutch out, and it would not move. That's how bad the clutch was. The clutch was just gone. And I was like, wow, I've never had one go out that bad before. I've had them slip, but I've never had one where it physically wouldn't even move anymore. Anyway, I was like, oh my gosh, I really just destroyed the clutch on this thing. And I wasn't even doing anything. I wasn't doing burnouts. I was just driving it down the road. Anyway, and the other thing is, the lady, one of the things was, is she says, well, the 4-wheel drive doesn't work. Well, I pulled it in the shop to look at it, to verify things. Within 10 minutes, I had the 4-wheel drive working. The shift motor on the transfer case, they said you don't use them very often. Odds are, most people don't use 4-wheel drive too often. That has electronic motor on the transfer case. Well, I pulled the transfer case motor off, tapped on it a couple times, ran the switch inside the thing. It didn't work at first, and then I unhooked the motor, ran 12 volts to it directly. The motor moved, flipped it around, motor moved the other way, stuck it back on there, bolted it back down, ran the switch in the dash, and all of a sudden the 4-wheel drive started working. So I was like, you know what, that's an easy fix. I'll take it. If it quits working, whatever, we know it needs a motor. Anyway, finally got to the point. I got parts ordered. I ended up getting a back window, a clutch, and a host of other little tiny parts that most people would be like, why did you do that? I don't know. I'm just a finicky person when it comes to buying a new vehicle. I want the stuff to work on it. I don't want just a beat up old truck at this point. So I was able to fix the cigarette lighter thing. You know, we used some panel bonded stuff and glued the. We didn't glue it back into the dash, but I got a big washer. We glued the washer to the dash part, and then we screwed the cigarette lighter back into it. So I had a place to fix to, so it wasn't just falling into the dash. Because, like I said, she was a smoker, so I don't know if she got mad or something. I don't know. Something happened. She broke the cigarette lighter. It was laying inside the dash. I was able to fix it. It doesn't look perfect, but it's good enough for a 300,000 mile truck. Anyway, ended up buying seat covers for it. Had to fix the driver's side window motor. The little plastic bushing things in the window broke. The passenger side window wasn't working. Well, I found out somebody had hooked the wires up backwards, so up was down and down was up. It was kind of weird. So I ended up taking the wires off of the window motor, and I flip-flopped them, and I plugged it back in. And then while I was at it, the passenger side window switch was not working. I replaced the window switch, got that to work. At that point in time, I had gotten a rear window for it. I did not install, well, I didn't remove the old one. We had a glass guy come out and do it because he knew what he was doing. And he was old enough, he remembers when those trucks were new, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember when they put these stupid slider windows in there, they glued them in, and he was kind of hemming and hawing about that. He wasn't super impressed with how they used to do stuff. And anyway, the one that I got was a more modern version, and it was a bolt-in one. He said, yeah, these, because he looked at it, and I was like, well, how hard are these to put in? And he's like, no, they're easy. It's just, you're going to have to pull the trim apart in the truck, because there's like studs, and you have to bolt them in. I was like, okay, and I didn't know anything about those, so between me and my other boss, who's the body guy, we were able to get the back window installed. Well, while we were at it, the headliner looked like Freddy Krueger got in there and just, I don't know what happened, if they had a dog or sharp fingernails or something. The headliner was just all shredded up. Well, I had ordered headliner material for it, thinking I had the right color. It was called Light Natural. Looked at the picture, looked at a piece of the old headliner, I ordered it. It shows up. Interior of the truck is a light gray color. Light natural is what they're saying on the website. Well, it shows up, it's straight up tan. I said, that ain't even close. Or it's like an ivory color, not even close. So I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So I came up with the idea. I'm like, all right, we'll just glue it. We scraped all the old headliner material off. Typical spray adhesive. And then we glued that ivory colored headliner on there. So I talked to my boss, the one that does the body work. I said, you think gray primer would work on this? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I've tinted stuff before with paint, and you can do it. So we took gray primer and we primered the whole thing gray. In the process of that happening, I ran out of spray paint. I had one can of primer. It was not enough to do. Oh, I should mention it's an extended cab Ranger. And it's not a step side. It's just a flare side truck. So anyway, I ran out of spray paint. I'm like, great, I don't have any more primer. And it was Rust-Oleum flat gray primer. The painter's touch ×2 stuff, whatever. It was just some stuff I had. I was using it to paint a snowplow bracket or something I had at my house. I forget why I even had it. But it was sitting there, full can, used the entire thing up. Because if you've ever painted fabric, it just soaks it up like a sponge. So I just burned through that can like nothing. Anyway, I ran out of primer. Well, body guy had a can of this 2-in-1 primer sitting there, gray primer. Grabbed the can, walked over to it, start spraying it. 5 seconds later, I go, shoot, it's the wrong color. It's light gray. The other stuff was a darker gray. And I'm like, well, we'll try fogging it. And then it looked like there was all these zebra stripes in it. And I'm like, great. So then I started talking to him, and I said, what do I do? He's like, well, you can go get more primer, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, could you just shoot it with your, primer gun? Yeah, I can do that for you. Well, he did it, and then it got all splotchy and looked funky. It looked like threadbare, material. I don't know what happened. There must have been some sort of solvent in it that kind of ate part of the headliner. like the fuzzy stuff on the headliner, so it was just like it didn't look super amazing. But anyway, I was like, you know what? I don't care at this point. It's not tore. It's better than it was. It dried. It looks like dark gray, basically. So I said, hell with it. We shoved it in the truck, buttoned the truck all back together, put the back window in it, which you have to take the window out to get the headliner out, because there's not enough room to get the headliner out, at least not easily, because the back doors don't open on that truck when they're extended cabs, because the early Rangers had jump seats in the back, which I just thought is hilarious, because I can't even hardly fit in the back of that Ranger with the passenger seat all the way forward. I can barely get back there. The driver's side, I can't even get into the back from the driver's side. So there ain't a lot of space. So I was like, oh great, like that's not that convenient. So anyway, we got that figured out. Then I started messing with stuff. I bought a dome light for it, because the original dome light, I don't know what happened. It got broke. They ripped it all apart. Well, part of it was there, but the lens and stuff was all missing, and the dome light wasn't working. So I found one on eBay, used one, $55 for a freaking used dome light. I'm like, why? Why is this $55? Anyway, it's a 3-bulb dome light, in case somebody cares, and I installed it. Well, I did that, and also the dome light's on. Closed the door. Waited. Dome light won't shut off. Great. Now what's going on? So I figured, well, there's got to be something going on with one of the door switches. Driver's side one, open and close it. It chimes. The door jar light comes on the dash. Okay. Well, I think it's working. Why else would the door jar light come on with the key on? Passenger side one, open the door. Door jar light's not coming on. Closed it. I'm like, okay, well, maybe we've got a door switch problem. So I start looking up, if I can get, because they don't have the little buttons like the old ones do. They're built into the freaking latch like the new stuff is. So I looked for an entire assembly. I was like, I'm just going to put the latch, switch, all that in one. Because stuff gets wore out. 300,000 miles, who knows how many times that door's been open. So anyway, I pulled I started looking up parts online. Well, the only one I could find, which is some OEM Ford part number, was over $300. I'm like, no freaking way am I paying $300 for a door latch for a 95 Ford Ranger pickup. That is not happening. I'm sorry for those purists out there that think I'm dumb for thinking that's not a good price. You're nuts. $50, maybe, not 300. I'm sorry. Anyway, I didn't go that route. I ended up finding the door jamb switches that you push them in there, quarter turn, you plug them in, and it goes onto the door latch assembly. Well, I bought some. Unfortunately, I installed it, and unfortunately, the only thing it changed was it turns the door jar light on now when you open the door. The dome light never shuts off. It's like, what the heck? So I started messing around with it. I start the truck with the door closed. Dome light shuts off when the truck's running. Second you shut the key off, the dome light turns back on. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. So, and I hate to admit it, I'm a mechanic, but this one has me stumped. I was Google searching it, everything. I've never had an instance of that where there isn't another underlying problem. The only thing I could think of is there's some sort of gem module or something that's not allowing the dome light to shut off when the key's in the off position. But why does it shut off when I start the truck? Because it works just like it should. I never tried. I guess I never really messed with trying to turn on the dome light, by the headlight switch. I never tried rolling the little thing up on the dash there, but I had that unplugged and stuff, and it still wouldn't shut the dome light off. So there's something else going on that's powering that dome light. So anyway, what I ended up doing, which is kind of a jerry rig fix, I pulled the lens back off and I took one of the screws out, and the way they mount those dome lights, they go in through the connectors with the screws. The screws go through the connectors, which is a weird way to mount a dome light, but that's how they do it. I pulled one of the screws out, it lost continuity or lost contact with it, it shut the light off. But since it has map lights built into the dome light, I can go left or right on the little switch there, and either the left side comes on or the right side comes on still, even with that screws on. And then the middle light doesn't turn on. So I was like, you know what, good enough. I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. Okay, anyway, we got that figured out. Well, now I was like, you know what, I want to see why the check engine light's on this thing. So I plugged into it, which I was actually nicely surprised to find out that this truck actually is early OBD2. For being a 95, that's the weird years, you know, when they were switching over to the OBD2. My 95 F-150, that's the OBD1. That's the style underneath the hood that's basically, I hate to say it, about worthless when it comes to diagnosing things with a computer, unless you're an absolute wizard at figuring that stuff out. I am not. OBD2 stuff, it's way easier. Anyway, I plugged into it. This truck always had this, the lady that I bought it from, her complaint was, the truck always starts hard. I was like, maybe it needs plugs or something like that. I pulled kind of a couple of the plugs out. I'm like, yeah, they're kind of wore, but nothing that it would cause it to start hard. So I put it all back together. No, that's not what it is. And once it ran fine. I was like, it does start hard though, and it smelled like it was running extremely rich. Like it was just, you know, might as well have been dumping gas out the exhaust. It was like, wow. It smells like an old lawnmower, you know, it was bad. So anyway, started looking at the data on the scan tool and look at the temp sensor. Negative 40 degrees. No, it is not negative 40 degrees outside. So I was like, cool. So ordered up temp sensor, put the temp sensor in it, and voila, pops right off every single time. It starts and runs pretty darn good. I went and drove it down the highway. She drives nice. Next issue is, due to being a high mileage truck, and I know some of you are probably like, man, you're getting very meticulous about this truck. Why are you putting all this money into it? And you might be right. It might come back to bite me in the butt, which unfortunately tends to happen to me. Hopefully not with this truck, though. I've had good luck with Fords, and I don't know why that is. I've had other makes and models of vehicles, and for some reason, I don't know why, they just don't like me. You know, and I'm saying this as I told you about that F-150, but so far it's been behaving after we had all those headaches with it. There's always that, when you first buy a vehicle, you gotta get all the bugs worked out of it. That truck right away told me it had plenty of bugs. Well, this Ranger, similar story, but it was just, the truck got old, the lady got tired of upkeeping it, and things just kept piling up. And it was just all this little stuff, and she just didn't bother to fix it anymore. So, of course, I want to fix it because it's a new truck to me, so I want it to be as good as it can be, you know, reasonably speaking, of course. I'm not going to put a motor in it or, you know, a new transmission or anything like that. So anyway, and yes, there'll be a few more things. But anyway, the next thing I found out, I'm trying to lose my train of thought. Next thing I found out, once I got the temperature thing figured out or whatever, it's running good. Oh yeah, the steering wheel, a lot of miles on it, whatever. Cruise control works on this truck, I should add. I said, with 300,000 miles, the cruise still works on it, which I was like, wow, that's impressive. One thing I will say, odometer quit working. It stopped exactly at 250,000 miles. Like, it's just about ready to roll over. Like, it's like, wow, like, what are the odds? So anyway, cruise control buttons are all just like, they're falling apart. I don't know if it's just crappy plastic. It looks like it's just like confettiing, just falling apart. You can push the little, like, they have those little, you know, momentary switches inside of them. You can push those and the cruise works. So I'm like, the electrical part's fine, it's just the switches are falling apart. So I ordered some switches. They are taking forever to get here. They're stuck in New York right now. They were supposed to show up last week. Well, now they're not going to show up till Monday. And hopefully it's not a scam deal and I'll have to reorder them, which I had an issue with another thing I'd ordered for this truck, which was just a cosmetic thing. It wasn't anything like that. Speaking of cosmetic things, well, and functionality, I went and bought a tonneau cover for it. I know everybody's like, why? Why are you doing this? You haven't even driven this truck yet. I got plates for it, finally. And, I bought a tonneau cover for it, and I stuck it on there. 140, 150, somewhere 140, 150 bucks for it, which I thought was pretty cheap. It looks nice. I don't know how strong it is or how long it's going to last, but for the price, I've always wanted a tonneau cover. I've actually never had a tonneau cover. Since I don't have my Challenger anymore, the reason behind getting a tonneau cover is I need to go get groceries or something since I live by myself. Um, I need a place to put them. Before I was throwing them in the back of my F-150, well, there's leaves and stuff in the back of it, and yeah, I'll go to pull the grocery bags off, and they're all just like, it's like you set them in dirt, you know, it's just like, then you drag that into the house, and it's just like, let's not do that. So, anyway, waiting on that, and next thing I got to do on this truck, when we drug it after the clutch went out, we drug it to the parking lot, and I just kept smelling brakes. Well, I think what happens is, I think the brake lines are starting to collapse on the front of the truck, and they're applying the brakes. If the truck sits for a while, they release, but if the truck is sitting there for a couple hours or something like that, you got to push it, feels like the parking brake's on. Me and my boss, my main boss, we went to push in the shop. We had to get another guy because it was too hard to push. So, there's obviously an issue there. So, I got new calipers, I got new hoses, I got new pads for it. That I haven't done yet. I'm waiting on that steering wheel switch to show up here for the cruise control. I'm just going to do it all at the same time because I can't work at my house right now. Well, I can, but I prefer not to freeze my butt off. Got a warm shop I can work in. I just want to be able to do everything in one time, you know. Although, you know, I could have technically waited and done it all at the same time, but I also don't want to be at the shop all night. But doing brake calipers and hoses, that shouldn't take that long. Put the steering wheel switches in. I figure a couple hours I'll have that stuff done. May turn the rotors, but those are the wonderful ones where you got to take everything apart. And if they're not warped, I don't want to sound lazy. I might just pad swap it, and or pad slap it, whatever you want to, however the terminology is. Anyway, that is the current update of my life right now. That's what's going on. That's why things are taking longer. That's why the Ranger Little Bohemian project is currently on the back burner. I hate to say it might be until spring, which I don't like saying that, but reality. The next thing coming up is got to put the snow blade on the F-150, and I had toyed around with the idea of getting a front mount for the Ranger, but I want to be able to drive that Ranger a little bit first to make sure it doesn't just crap out on me immediately, and I just, you know, wasted, you know, $1,000 on parts. That one might hurt a little bit, but I'll only be out, I guess, $1,000 versus, you know, a new, like a $3,500 truck. If, in all honesty, if I were to resell that truck right now, I think I could probably get $3,500 for it. The Ranger, that is. I think it's worth that. It runs good. I was able to get the clutch to work right after we did the clutch. We had a big issue with the bleeding clutches, which, if any of you have ever had to deal with Ranger clutches, you know they are a nightmare to bleed. We had a lot of issues with it. It kept grinding first and reverse. The first day after I put it in there, I went and drove it. I almost didn't make it back because it wouldn't go into gear. That was very, very sketchy and nerve-wracking, and I about had to call somebody to drag me back home, drag me back in the town, because I came around the corner to go up onto the highway, and I couldn't get it to go into gear, and I'm stuck on the hill. I'm like, great. So I had to kind of back it down and then off the side of the road, and then a car comes around the corner. Luckily, they didn't run into me, so I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is super sketchy. Anyway, the story with that new Ranger is not over yet. Eventually, I'll show it to you guys. It's a maroon colored Ranger, extended cab XLT. It's got an aftermarket ancient Pioneer Super Tuner 2 CD player in it, which I was surprised that it works. I don't know if the CD player part works. I never tried a CD in it, but the radio worked. It wasn't working at first. I wiggled the display on it, and then all of a sudden it turned on. I'm like, and I took it off, put it on a couple times. It must have just been some crud on the pins or something, and it's working. I'm like, cool. I'm like, hey, at least I got a radio, so willing to try that out. So, I don't have to buy a radio for it. I don't really get into the whole... I used to get into the audio stuff. It sounds like it's actually got decent sounding speakers. They don't sound like they're blown. At least the rear ones. I don't know about the ones in the doors. But the rear ones sound like they were working. So anyway... lots of rambling in this video. I understand a lot of you guys you get bored, you want action, but this was just the update of my life, what's going on, why I haven't posted a video in quite a while. This, like I said, things are just going slow. I'll give you a little peek of the Ranger. It's freezing outside right now, so sorry if I get a little weird about it. But anyway, you can see the reflection. The Ranger's sitting right out there. You can see there's no hood on it, and the blue F-150 is parked right behind it. That's how the Ranger is sitting currently right now. V8 is installed. It's sitting in there. It's not installed properly, but it's sitting in the engine bay. So yes, I did finally get it off the engine stand. For all those people that thought I'm all talk and no action, I got that much done. And that was the push. I was trying to get more done, but ran into some problems. The transmission and stuff it needs to come forward. The mount's in the way. I don't have a way to lift the transmission and the engine at the same time. And then it just kind of just bloop, 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 bloop. Momentum stopped. And I was like, I gotta have somebody else help me, and I also would like to drag it into the shop so I can work on it easier. So that's unfortunately where that Ranger is right now. So I would like to, at some point, drag it into the shed so it's not sitting out, and hopefully it doesn't get snowed on. This time of year, it's extremely unpredictable what the weather's going to do. It's freezing cold outside some nights, other times not terrible. Today was pretty cold. Yesterday wasn't that bad. The weather's all over the place in Nebraska this time of year. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Like I said, this is just an update video of me trying to give you guys some ideas of what's going on. Well, why you aren't seeing projects getting finished, and why is it taking you so long with that dumb Ranger? That should be an easy project, that typical stuff. Trust me, I would love to get it done. It's just time isn't allowing me to, and I just don't have a lot of energy. I get tired a lot. I don't know why. This must just be the way I'm made. I'm not a super high energy person. I get tired after work. That's just me after work. I got old man syndrome, I guess. I'm, like I said, 36, and I feel like I'm 50 some days. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Hope to see you on the next one.